Hello, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome here. And if you're not new, you'll notice that I'm back in my old filming spot. I've returned home for the summer for some, summer family things, and then I will be back in New York. But for now, we have a quiet filming space, no New York traffic, and we're back with another section of Three Little Words, a memoir by Ashley Rhodes Collier. And we're about halfway here, in the middle of, I believe it's chapter 9. Yes, we're in the middle of chapter 9. We're on page 168. All right, if you're liking this one, give me a thumb, comment, subscribe so that you don't miss the rest of it. And if you're just joining us, go back and catch up with the previous videos. So let's jump right in. We're on page 168. Let me close my computer here. Make sure it doesn't make any noise on us. And there's a little page break here in the page. All right, page 168. I was anxious about several upcoming changes in my life. I had to have an egg-sized cyst removed from my back, which was a relief because Will had started calling me humpback. I was also about to start middle school, where I would be a lowly 6th grader. None of that would have been so daunting if the worst thing in the world was not about to happen. Miss Sandness was leaving to get her master's degree in social work. Well, I told myself she wasn't my family, so it didn't really matter. I started thinking about ways to find out where my mother might be and how I might contact her. While the authorities had kept my whereabouts a secret from her, she might be living nearby, hoping I would find her. Added to that, I was being awakened by frightening dreams that involved shouts in the dark, men with bloody hands, and women screaming. Before I could fall back to sleep, I would go sit in the night security guard and sip a glass of water. Nothing was private at the cottage. Logbooks of our behaviors were kept, so after I answered one sympathetic guard's questions, Mary Fernandez brought the subject up at therapy. I hated rehashing everything, and I was a little bit afraid she would want to link my bad dreams to my feelings about my mother, so I vowed to keep any future nightmares to myself. Just before school started, the whole campus, including cottage staff and therapists, moved to the camp that we had attended the year before. There was a cool lake for tubing, water skiing, and fishing, a swimming pool, crafts, even archery, and BB gun ranges. One afternoon, a man was filming the kids in the pool. "Mr. Cameraman, watch this," I said before I attempted my first dive. When I popped up, I looked in his direction. "Did you get it?" "Sure did," the familiar-looking man responded. "What are you filming?" one of the other kids called out. "A movie about camp," he called back. Nothing special registered in my brain. I was looking forward to that evening's Capture the Flag contest because I often led the pack. Later, as we sat around the bonfire singing folk songs and roasting marshmallows, I thought, this is what regular kids do. Okay, maybe we had more than our share of emergency room visits, like the time one of the boys had to get BBs sucked out of his ears, but in the beautiful forest by the lake, the insanity seemed less intense. Best of all, I was too busy most of the time to worry about losing my mother, and now Miss Sandness. After camp, I had my cyst removed. The doctor did not give me a sufficient anesthetic, so it wore off in the middle of the surgery. Then he removed the stitches too early and the wound ruptured. The resulting scar was uglier than the cyst. Will changed my nickname from Humpback to Scar. I did not care about it as much as the fact that Miss Sandness was leaving only in a few days. The idea of not having her any longer made me ache like there was something wrong with my bones. The day of her departure, we handed her farewell cards. Sabrina started clinging to her, and then Sam and Will latched on as well. I watched from a distance as Miss Sandness tried to disengage them. "I've got to go now," she gave me a half smile. "I'll be around for my internship, so it's not like I'm going to China." An overwhelming sensation crushed my chest so that I could barely breathe. I felt as though I were having a heart attack. "We won't let her leave," Sam shouted. Leroy ran outside and jumped on the hood of her car. Miss Sandness looked over her shoulder and back at me. She did not know which way to turn. Sam and Will had joined Leroy. Miss Sandness peeled Sabrina off. Then Sabrina also rushed out to the car. Miss Sandness' eyes were teary as she came toward me. "Ash, I'll miss you." I fell into her arms and, for the first time, hugged her as if I would never let go. "Ash," I heard the catch in her throat. "Everything good is going to happen for you. I know it." "You're the only good thing." I jerked away and rushed out the door. Sam, Will, and Sabrina were lying under the wheels of the car. Leroy sat on the hood. I threw myself against the driver's door. "Don't leave me," I sobbed. Another staff member helped peel us off the car while Miss Sandus climbed into the driver's seat. She checked to make sure she was not backing up on any of us, and then drove off without waving. I did not know what Miss Sandus knew. I had a family. Mr. Todd interrupted my dinner and asked me to step out into the lobby. "What did I do?" I asked in response to his stern look. "It's okay," he said. "Miss Beth just wants to ask you something." He led me to her office. Instead of returning to the cafeteria, he slouched against the door. "Ashley," Miss Beth began in her gentlest tone, "how would you feel if you and Luke were both adopted, but by different families who live near each other?" "Whatever you think is best." I gulped for air. Do I have a family?" "We just wanted your opinion so we could check out some options." There was something odd about her expression that made me think this wasn't theoretical, but I was too timid to ask anything else. When I returned to the cafeteria, Mr. Irvin handed me my plate. I waved it away. "You done?" he asked. My stomach felt as if it would reject anything I ate, so I said, "I guess." "I understand," he said with a wink that could have meant that he knew something or merely that it was okay to skip the meal. The next day, a staff member told me that I had a dental appointment. Miss Sharon Williamson, my new primary, came into my room. "You ready?" "I have to brush my teeth first." "Why?" "Aren't I going to the dentist?" "Oh," she looked uncomfortable. "You have to see Miss Beth first." "Hi, Ashley," Miss Beth said. She handed me a blue book with gilt-edged pages. "You can open it." Miss Sharon's voice sounded like she was more excited to see it than I was. I looked down. "Album" was written in gold script. I turned the page to see the exterior of a 2-story house. I flipped to the next page. It read, "A recent photo of the Quarter family." "Do you remember seeing these people at the last adoption picnic?" Miss Sharon asked. "No." "They've been around the campus and also filmed at camp." "The cameraman wanted to adopt me? Did that happen after he saw me dive or before? Or..." I stared at the first family portrait. One son was in a cap and gown. The other son and the father were wearing shirts and ties, while the mother had on a striped suit and a floppy hat. They looked stiff, and their smiles were goofy. Nobody looked familiar. The images blurred. "May I take it back to the cottage?" "Of course, Ashley. It's yours," Miss Beth said. Miss Sharon and I crossed the quad. The dentist was forgotten. I called to the kids watching television. "I've got a family," and tossed my album on the table. Will grabbed it. "Wow," he said. "Look at that boat and the dock." Sam joined in. "And get a load of that gigantic Christmas tree." "Why would they show you a table full of food?" Sabrina wrinkled her nose. I snatched the album back and thumbed through it again. At the end, there was a letter written to me. "We are the Quarters. Phil and Gay met when we were working for the same company in New York City in 1968. At that time, we were making films for children. We fell in love almost from the minute we met and were married within that year. We have been together ever since and have a very happy marriage and home. We still make movies and videos, often about children and families. Sometimes we have to travel for business, but we often take our children with us." As a few more kids trickled in, Will announced, "Ashley's got a family." "Me too," cried Luke. He rushed into the room, waving another album. I checked out the Hudsons, who were younger and more like what I had in mind. The Hudsons also had dogs, which I preferred to the Quarters' 5 cats, but it was the Quarters' home that won me over. Although it did not have lion statues guarding the front door, it was close to my dream castle. I went to my room so I could continue reading the letter from the Quarters in private. They had 2 sons. Blake was 23 and had just graduated from college. Josh was 20 and still in college. Gay was a writer who was just finishing her 8th book, and Philip made films. The letter mentioned that they flew airplanes. I could not imagine what this family was like or why they would want me. The letter went on to describe their 5 cats. One had only 3 legs, and they all had peculiar names. Then it continued. Outside our house is the Crystal River. In the winter, the manatees are all around us, and sometimes dolphins swim up to the dock. There are many types of birds, fish in the water, and sometimes a whole family of otters. At night, there are alligators that we can see if we take flashlights. There are also raccoons, possums, and armadillos hanging around. Now and then, you can even spot a wild pig in the road. There are all sorts of frogs, toads, and bugs, too. This sounded more like a place that Luke would enjoy. He liked cats and bugs and would be thrilled to see a gator. None of that interested me. I went back to the photos and studied the paisley bedspread in the room that would be mine, the tiles edging the swimming pool, the curvy sofa in the living room, the size of the boat tied at the dock, and the pots hanging over the kitchen sink. I tried to imagine walking from room to room, sleeping in the large bed without an annoying roommate, or strolling along the seawall to see the manatees. I wondered if they would let me invite friends over for a pool party or even sleepovers. I continued reading the letter. We have a very happy, fun family. We always try to help each other out and make sure that everyone is feeling okay. Phil and Gay take turns with chores and taking care of our children. If there's a big job, we all pitch in together to get it done, and then we can be free to have fun sooner. We have a lot of love to give to more children, and we believe that if everyone cares about each other, everyone can be happy. That sounded like something they thought they should write, because on closer inspection, their expressions in the photograph did not seem as happy-go-lucky as their words claimed, but I figured they would be able to offer me opportunities. I couldn't decide if they seemed more like one of those quirky sitcom families or a bunch of weirdos who make a good first impression but flip out behind closed doors. But I realized that it would be stupid to pass up this opportunity, with or without Luke. It looked like a good deal. I'd get a lot of attention, a lot of stuff, and it couldn't be worse than most of the places I had been. If I really hated it, I could always come back to the children's home. Lots of others had, even after they had been adopted. "They're coming! They're coming!" Luke called out. He had been on lookout since dawn. I watched both families get out of the van. All 4 were wearing t-shirts, shorts, and sandals. After brief introductions, the Hudson family steered Luke to a picnic bench near the parking lot. The staff picked the farthest table for themselves so they could be inconspicuous. Gay and Phil positioned themselves on a bench with me in the middle. I managed to squirm enough so I did not have to touch them. Nobody spoke. I gazed up at the trees where a deflated red balloon was caught in some branches. Phil broke the silence. "Do you have any questions for us?" "Where did you get that necklace?" I asked Gay without looking directly at her. "At a craft shop in Maine." Gay lifted it over her head and handed it to me. All the beads were made from blown glass. "What will my bedtime be?" I said as I fingered the smooth leaves interspersed with bird and fish shapes on her necklace. "That depends on what time school starts," Phil said. "How much allowance will I get?" "Our son's got $5 a week in middle school," he replied. Gay changed the subject. "Want a snack?" Phil fetched the cooler, which they had filled with sodas, juices, various kinds of cheese, several boxes of crackers, and jars of peanut butter and jelly. I slipped Gay's necklace over my neck. "How did you know I loved cheese?" Gay grinned. "A little mouse clued us in." I thought that this was their lame attempt to be funny. I glanced over to the table where Miss Sandus was sitting. She had come back for the day to be supportive. "Miss Sandus?" "Actually, Miss Sandus?" She's not calling to her. She's asking if she clued her. "Okay. Actually, it was your guardian," Gay admitted. "The cracker tasted like paste, and the juice was too sweet. Want to see my room?" I led the way to the cottage. Why don't you adopt me?" Will shouted as we walked past the living room. "My room's back here," I said, "but men aren't allowed." "It's okay," said Miss Sandus, who had been trailing us. "Can you reach that?" I pointed to the Tiffany & Co. box on my top shelf. When Phil handed it down, I opened it. "My mother gave me this music box." "It's beautiful," Gay said. "Your mother really cared about you." I twisted her beads so hard I thought they might snap. Miss Sandus coughed. I guess we need to be going, Phil said, but we can come back on Monday if that's okay with you. Sure, I said. Outside, Luke hugged the Hudsons and said, Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad. Oh. The quarters stood stiffly. I kept my distance as we walked to the parking area. Phil opened the car door for Gay. We hesitated and waved. Wait, I called. Don't forget your necklace. Do you want to borrow it? She asked. What if something happens to it? We care about people, not things. When they arrived for dinner on Monday, I could barely face Gay. What's wrong? She asked. I gulped. I accidentally broke your necklace. I explained that I had worn it to school. When a girl grabbed for it, I decided to put it in my book bag, but it got squashed on the school bus and one of the glass leaves split in half. It's my fault, Gay responded. I should have realized it was too fragile. You're not mad at me? Of course not, she said, although I was not sure she meant it. We had pizza, but I barely ate anything. How long have you known about me? We first heard about you 6 months ago, Phil said. Have you seen me before? Many times, Phil said with a laugh. When the quarters rattled off how often they had been at the children's home, I was shocked. I could not believe they heard my welcoming speech at the Murphy Awards and saw me dance at a special event several months earlier. I knew that Phil had filmed me at the camp pool, but not that Gay had watched my Lucille Ball skit at the talent show. How could I have been oblivious to the family that had been shopping for me? The next step was a visit to my family's home. Beth Lord and Sharon Ambrose drove Luke and me to Citrus County. First, we dropped Luke and Miss Sharon at the Hudson's home in a wooded glen, and then Miss Beth took me about 10 miles farther to Crystal River. Hi, Phil said as he opened the glass front door. I passed by him, ignored Gay, and walked down the hall to a door with a sign that read Ashley's room. I surveyed the room briefly, then returned to the car, retrieved my Tiffany box and placed it on a shelf in the bedroom. Next, I carried in a garbage bag containing my stuffed animals. Are you moving in? Phil chuckled tensely. Just putting my stuff where it will be safe. Okay. Gay glanced first at Phil, then at Beth Lord. Are you hungry? Gay asked. My stomach was doing cartwheels, so I only shrugged. Do you like pasta? I guess. Phil led the way into the kitchen. Have you ever made noodles from scratch? I shook my head. Do you want thinner spaghetti or fatter fettuccine? Fettuccine. It sounded more sophisticated, although I was not sure what the difference was. I helped Phil pour the eggs, water, and flour into a machine, then hang the strands on a rotating stand he had built. Gay chopped onions and peeled tomatoes. I can make any kind of sauce. Would you prefer white or red? I did not react. Some people prefer it plain with butter, just ragu. Let me check the pantry. For a minute, I thought she had said panty and was confused. She came out of the little room holding a jar. We use it for pizza, she said apologetically to Beth Lord. She started to pour it in a pot. I prefer it cold. Gay grimaced, but allowed me to dump the sauce directly on the pasta from the jar. I stirred it around, took a few bites. The noodles were too chewy. When Phil noticed I had not touched most of my food, I apologized. I'm a picky eater. We'll figure out what you like. And you might learn to try new foods. He grinned. Like sushi. What's that? Raw fish. He was kidding, right? There was a pause. I forced my laugh. They laughed. What had I gotten myself into? Right. Middle of page 180 at the page break. A few days later, Gay arrived to take me clothes shopping. She wanted to buy me a fancy dress because we were going to see Phantom of the Opera for her birthday. Gay held up a purple dress with a lace collar and puffy sleeves. That's dorky, I said, moving toward a rack of silky dresses with spaghetti straps. I picked out a turquoise one with a low-cut neckline. Gay shook her head. But I look better in blue, and I despise purple. It's not the color, was all she said. We found 2 dresses I didn't hate, and picked out some other things I really liked. Overall shorts, striped shirts in several colors, and a pair of designer jeans. Okay, let's try them on, Gay said. I refused to go in the dressing room. How will you know if they fit? She asked. Miss Sandus bought my clothes for me. If they didn't fit, she returned them. I live 2 hours away, Ashley, so you'll have to try them on now. I could tell she was annoyed. You can have your privacy, just show me the ones you like. I stormed out of the store because I did not want to admit that I had never been in a dressing room before. Gay caught up with me. How about a snack? We shared a large cinnamon pretzel and had lemonade, but the sugar caught in my throat and the drink was too sour. For the next visit, the Quarters were permitted to take me to their home without a staff member supervising, but I could not stay overnight. I half expected they would change their minds, yet Phil was right on time to pick me up. We went on their boat and swam in their pool. I especially liked the way Phil made grilled cheese sandwiches. I checked out the pictures of the family on the walls. Several featured Phil piloting a small plane. Maybe I would go flying with him someday. When Gay drove me home that evening, she prattled on about some girls my age in the neighborhood. You'll like them, they're all really nice. Yeah, nice, I thought. This person does not have a clue about me. When I was in foster care, some of the people weren't very nice, I began tentatively. She nodded. Did you know that I'm a guardian at Lytton, like Mary Miller? I've visited some pretty ghastly foster homes. Not as bad as this one. Tell me about it. Instead of freaking when I described the most gruesome of the Moss's punishments, she spoke calmly. That sounds like it would have made you angry. It did. I began telling her about the hot sauce, and by the time we reached the cottage, I had revealed more to her in 2 hours than I had to Mary Fernandez in 2 years. After several daytime visits, I was allowed to stay with the Quarters overnight. Miss Sandus, who was now doing her master's internship at the Homes Therapy Department, dropped me off. When we pulled into the circular driveway, I asked, could I just stay a little while and then go back with you? Ashley, you'll be fine, Miss Sandus insisted. Here. She reached behind her and pulled her college sweatshirt from the back seat. You can borrow this. I put it on inside and wore it the whole time I was there. 24 hours later, I was eager to return to the campus, although after 15 minutes of the usual cottage commotion, I wanted to go back to the Quarters. Or I wanted to be back with the Quarters. For Gay's birthday, I wore a black velvet dress with white stripes down the side that Miss Sandus had picked out. Gay had also chosen a black and white outfit, so we matched. At the restaurant at the Tampa Bay Performing Arts Center, the mingling smells of buffet food made me queasy. I only took a few bites of a dinner roll. Would you like butter on that? Gay asked. I wrinkled my nose. How about dessert? Phil pointed out an array of cakes and pies. I don't like many sweets. We climbed the steps to the Performing Arts Center. I glanced from my left to my right. Were this balding man and this intimidating woman really going to be my parents? And that's the end of chapter 9. Right, chapter 10 on page 183. Testing. Ever since Miss Sandus left, I found everything about the children's home irritating. I saw no reason to do well in my new middle school. My first 6th grade report card was the worst I had ever received. When can I move already? I asked Beth Lord. Everyone has to follow the visitation schedule. Her eyes crinkled as she gave a secretive smile. But I have good news. The judge signed the orders giving you permission to go to New England with the Quarters next week. Though I wanted to meet my new brothers, I was worried about being alone with the Quarters for so long and getting enough regular food to eat. When we arrived at the airport, I was surprised to be at a gate for a large airplane. I thought you guys had your own plane. We don't have one anymore, Phil sighed. It's a long story, Gay said slowly. Did you crash it or something? Actually, we did, Phil said, and you should be glad. It seemed to me that I never knew what the Quarters were going to say next, and it made me feel uncomfortable, like I would never belong. Gay fumbled in her purse and came up with a stack of pictures. She shuffled through recent ones of her sons and lots of me. On the bottom were several photos showing a plane with a broken wing and a smashed propeller in a field. The 3 of us were on our way to Blake's graduation from Princeton, Gay began. Josh had just completed his first year at Hampshire College and was going to begin his internship with a commercial film editing house in New York the following week, so we packed up the plane with all his stuff and flew north from here. It was a gorgeous day, not a cloud in the sky, and we were so happy and proud. Her voice faltered, and Phil took over. We had just crossed the Chesapeake Bay and did not want to have to deal with Philadelphia's busy air traffic controllers, so I decided to stay out of their jurisdiction and headed for Trenton. Neither of them spoke for a moment. There was a loud bang. Gay was staring out at a jet that was coming in for a landing with a constricted expression on her face. What happened? I asked. Total engine failure. Phil paused. We used our instruments to find the nearest airport, and I picked up the microphone and told the Trenton Tower about the emergency, Gay added. There should have been a small airport 5 miles away, Phil said. Josh noticed a break between some trees that might have been a grass strip, but we couldn't line up for it without any engine. Then Josh spied an L-shaped field, which was the only open space in miles of forest, and told Phil, Dad, I think that's the best we're going to do. Gay continued. Yeah, Phil muttered. I looked out my side window and saw the field rushing up. We had landed on grass strips before, but this one was dotted with mounds that looked like waves undulating toward us. Gay made a dipping motion with her hand. There was a stand of pine trees at the far end of the field. I prayed that we would not smash full force into the woods. To our right was a small red barn. Phil steered away from it, but it was connected to a fence directly in our path. Gay's eyes locked with Phil's. I kept talking to the tower. We're touching down. It's bumpy. We're going through a fence. A fence post made from a railroad tie had hit the center of the right wing violently enough to spin the plane sideways, Phil explained. Brown dust engulfed the plane as we slid down the field that angled out to the right. Both the swift turn and the thick soil slowed the plane, and we came to a jerky stop. Were you hurt? I asked, looking at them differently. They no longer seemed like cardboard parents, but flesh and blood people who had almost died before I had even met them. No, we were fine. Gay's voice quaked, and she relived her shock. Phil and I rushed out the front door. The rear door had already flown open when the plane had made the sharp turn. Josh was almost thrown out, but the seatbelt held him inside. We dashed as far away from the plane as possible. Back farther, Phil ordered when he saw fuel dripping from the broken right wing. I'm hungry. Did it explode? Gay pointed to the picture. No, this is how it ended up. The sandy earth absorbed the volatile fuel. We checked each other, and we were all okay, except Josh had an abrasion from the seatbelt, Phil added. Gay glanced from me to Phil and back to me. Then something magical happened. She gave me the most relaxed smile I had seen on her face so far. Phil hugged me and said, I think we survived because we're meant to do something else. Phil nudged me with his elbow, and that, my dear, would be you. Right, middle of page 186. On the plane, Gay asked if I wanted a snack. She had cheese slices and peanut butter crackers in her purse. I also packed ramen noodles, mac and cheese, and a travel hot pot. I nodded and stared straight ahead, as if the phone in the back of the seat in front of me were the most fascinating object I had ever seen. Do I have to call you Dad and Mom? Of course not, Phil replied. Ever? I directed my words to Gay. It's entirely your decision, she said. From her bottomless carry-on, Gay pulled out magnetic checkers, a mini Yahtzee set, and Go Fish and Old Maid cards, which we played until we landed in Hartford. As soon as we were on the highway, I gasped at the foliage. It was every color I could remember from a Crayola box, and more orange, red, and green, yellow, mahogany, gold. We passed a pick-it-yourself orchard. Apples! May I pick one? Phil stopped, and I ran to the first tree, plucked an apple, and took a huge bite. Sticky juice ran down my chin, but I did not care. It was the most scrumptious apple I had ever tasted. After filling a bag with me, Gay checked her watch. Josh is probably waiting for us. We were attending Parents' Weekend at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. This campus had little in common with Andrews University, where the Merritt's daughter had gone. Both had dramatic vistas over rolling lawns and tall trees, but the students here were almost a different species. Hampshire hairstyles ranged from dreadlocks to electric blue mohawks to shaved heads. Men and women flaunted wicked tattoos and piercings in crazy places, and most wore comfortable rather than trendy clothing. "You must be Josh's folks," a girl in long homespun skirt said as we entered a courtyard. "He'll be back in a few." The back door to his dorm, called a mod, banged open. "Hey, buddy," Phil exclaimed. He and Josh hugged and patted each other's backs. Josh walked over to me. His wavy hair was longer than mine and pulled back in a ponytail. "So this is my little sister," he said with a wide grin. The next day, Blake drove in from Boston to join us. He shook my hand like a business client, yet he sounded like a cowboy when he said, "Howdy." The gap between his front teeth made him look friendly. We crowded into Josh's car, which had more room than our rental, and headed to New Hampshire to have lunch with Phil's mother and his brother's family. The Quarters were so busy catching up and joking with one another that they did not pay much attention to me. I noticed that Blake looked like Phil, but seemed to have more of Gay's abrupt personality, whereas Josh resembled Gay, yet had Phil's mellow mood. I could not figure out where I would fit into this tight-knit group. Phil's brother, Dan, was a pastor. He and his wife, Linda, reminded me of the Merritts. As I held their newborn granddaughter, I thought they would never consider getting rid of her, but I could be sent back at any time. "How about a family reunion shot?" Grandma Quarters suggested. I did not think that I would be included, but Gay made sure I was in the front row. Dan said, "Well, you look at this great bunch of Quarters, and Ashley fits right in." Linda agreed that I looked like their youngest daughter, who also had red hair. Instead of finding her observation comforting, I was offended. My hair color had nothing to do with whether these people accepted me or not. I felt as if Phil and Gay were showing off their good deed, and nobody realized I was overwhelmed and frightened. The next morning, we said goodbye to Josh and headed to Boston with Blake. "Ash, why don't you ride with me?" he suggested when his parents pulled up in the rental car. The inside of the van looked like a living room. There were no seats in the back, just an oriental carpet and a stereo the size of a home entertainment center. "Want to hear my new CD?" I asked. "Play track 3. As the music to Barbie Girl started, Blake winced at the high-pitched voices mimicking Ken and Barbie. "Play it again," he said. Soon he was singing the male parts while I did the female. We kept it up for most of the trip. We were going to stay with Gay's cousins, Bob and Shirley Zimmerman, who lived on the top 2 floors of a Back Bay townhouse. They greeted us with outstretched arms. I disliked being hugged and had been relieved that the Quarters in New Hampshire hadn't been touchy-feely, but when Shirley reached out, I didn't want to seem impolite. "Hey, Blake," Bob said, "your hairline is getting to look like your old man's. If you keep it up, it will look like mine." Without warning, Bob whipped off his toupee. I lurched so hard I almost fell back into their china cabinet. "Ashley," Blake said, "welcome to our crazy family." I despised most of the meals Gay cooked. "I know you're a fussy eater," she said, "but I'm not a mind reader." She asked me to write out a list of the foods I liked. On my next visit, Phil started to grill hamburgers. "I only eat junior bacon cheeseburgers," I announced. "Can we go and buy one?" "We're also having mashed potatoes, fruit salad, coleslaw, and carrot and celery sticks. I am sure you'll find something to eat," Gay replied. "I don't think so." I gave Phil my cutest pout. "If you're still hungry when I drive you back to Tampa, we'll stop for something," he said. I picked at some of the mashed potatoes, which were more delicious than I let on, but as soon as we were in the car, I begged Phil to stop at Wendy's. "Can't send you back hungry," he said. "Are you going to tell Gay?" I asked. "Gay and I stick together on everything." "But she didn't want me to have extra food." "Ashley, both of us want to make you happy. Give Gay a chance, okay?" I knew Gay was trying to please me, but for some reason I resisted every attempt she made. She made chicken nuggets in the oven so they'd have a KFC flavor but not as much fat. They were quite good, although I was annoyed by the way she preached to me about eating healthy foods. One of the few veggies I would eat was cauliflower, and Gay smiled whenever I gobbled it down with either buttered breadcrumbs or a cheddar cheese sauce. The Quarters preferred fancy salads, but Gay would make me a separate one with chunks of plain iceberg. I could not tolerate anything with a sauce or any foods combined, so Gay would separate the meat and the vegetables for me. Gay wanted me to taste the food she'd made before asking for an alternative dinner. Sometimes she would prod me to take a few more bites. Mostly she would shrug, and then I could leave the table and make ramen noodles, canned soup, SpaghettiOs, macaroni and cheese, or grilled cheese. When Gay reheated some chicken from the night before, I said, "We never have to eat leftovers at the children's home." "Help yourself to an alternative meal, if you want," she responded. I poked around in the pantry and came out cradling a bag of Doritos. "That's not a nutritious choice," Gay groaned. I rattled the chip bag, then slowly parted the sides. My mischievous look dared Gay to say something as the bag burst open. "Put that back." "Would you like me to make you a grilled cheese sandwich?" Phil asked. "Sure, I'm starving. I want 5. 5? Gay exploded. "You can have 2, she sputtered. "Then have some salad or fruit. If you are hungry after that, you can have more." "It's okay. I'll just make her what she'll eat," Phil replied. "She'll never eat 5 sandwiches. Then she'll learn to self-limit," he said. I wolfed down 3 of the sandwiches, belching loudly to punctuate my victory. I plopped myself on the couch to watch television. Gay fumed as she cleaned up the waste. I overheard her whispering to Phil in the kitchen. "We have to teach her healthy eating habits, and besides, this was about control." "Who lost control?" he countered. "You didn't back me up, so she won." "She's lost control of her whole life. Isn't it good that she has some now?" "There's a difference between self-control and manipulation," Gay snarled, and stomped upstairs to her office. Phil came and sat beside me on the sofa. I plopped my feet in his lap, a signal for a foot rub. It was nice to have him on my side. After the New England trip, I asked to move in with the quarters full-time. "You haven't completed the visitation schedule," Beth Lord reminded me. "I don't want to waste more time at Roland Park Middle." "There are technical problems," the adoption worker admitted. "The Department of Children and Families hasn't completed some paperwork." The next time I saw Gay, I appealed to her. "I want to celebrate my birthday with my new family, and now because they can't get the papers done in time, I can't." Gay contacted Mary Miller. "We are licensed as foster parents," she told my guardian. "We can take her as a foster child while they work out the details." Mary Miller agreed to the plan. However, the department didn't have anyone available who could supervise me. Beth Lord, who often visited her mother in Citrus County, offered to do it. My last day at the children's home was Halloween. For Luke's sake, I went trick-or-treating in the university dorms. The next day, Phil picked me up. I packed every last possession, said my farewells to Sabrina, the rest of the cottage staff, and the other kids, and headed out the door. Luke trailed me. "Don't go yet," he whined. "The Hudsons are picking you up soon," I said. "You're going to visit them." He clutched my arm. "Come on, Lukey, I gotta go." It was like trying to disengage an octopus. As soon as I unwound one arm, he curled his leg around mine. When a staff member pulled him off me, Luke turned and kicked the wall. Phil hurried me to the car. In the distance, I could hear my brother screaming, "Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" When I arrived at the quarters, Gay helped me unpack. She held up one of my collared Roland Park shirts. "Since you won't be wearing uniforms, you'll need more school outfits." "May I get new sneakers too?" "Yes," Gay said, "but you still have to try everything on." I agreed, but I refused to allow Gay in the fitting room. Phil asked me to model my new outfits. Which should I wear the first day? "What about the overalls?" he suggested. "That sounds good," I said, and laid them out with a pink tie-dye shirt. At bedtime, the quarters came to tuck me in. Phil said, "We like to give you good night kisses. Is that all right with you?" "Yes," I replied, "but I'll never kiss you back." "That's fine." He brushed my forehead with his lips, "though you can always change your mind." After Phil left the room, Gay stroked my hair. "It's okay not to love us." I kept my face buried in my pillow, yet my ears were full on alert. "And I'm not going to say that I love you, because I haven't known you long enough to feel that way. I like you very much, and I want you to be my daughter forever, but love is something that grows with shared experiences. I feel the buds of love growing, but it hasn't blossomed yet." I could not believe she was being so honest. She took a long breath. There's nothing we can say to make you believe that we'll be here for you. You'll only learn it by living with us year after year after year. She smoothed my hair again and stood up. The bed springs creaked. I turned enough to see her hovering over me, and for the first time I saw her as more of a protector than a stranger. Ashley, one of these days I will tell you that I love you. When you hear those 3 words from my lips, you will know they came from my heart. Sweet dreams, sweetie, she said, and stepped out in the hall. On my first day of school, Phil handed me a lunchbox containing cheese sandwiches and pickles. I want to be certain you'll have something you like. I've never taken my own lunch. I had always been a free lunch kid. He handed me $2. Here's money in case you want to buy something else. Later, you can choose whether you want to pack lunch or buy it. Since Phil's office was close to the school, he said he would drive me. You'd have to get up an hour earlier for the school bus, and some of those kids can be tough. No kidding. I told him about the time one of the children's home's kids had terrorized a bus and the police had to rescue us. The guidance counselor knew Phil, and they chatted while he filled out the enrollment forms. Phil noticed that I was quivering. Cutie pie, you're going to be fine, but if you need me, I can come back in 2 seconds. A girl walked up to me. I'm Grace Morrow, she said. I'm here to walk you to Miss Mack's class. I followed her closely because my eyes were blurring. We have a bunch of the same classes. The hallway swarmed with so many students that I almost lost sight of my guide. Grace waved me into the science classroom. Hi, I'm Miss McDonald, but everyone calls me Miss Mack. The teacher smiled. You came on a good day because we're watching a movie and having popcorn, but don't think it's always this much fun. A pack of students thundered into the room. My knees felt like jelly. Tears spurted unexpectedly. Miss Mack steered me into the hall. Honey, are you okay? I want to go home, I wailed. Miss Mack asked Grace to take me back to the guidance office. In a few minutes, Phil was sitting beside me. Take me home, I begged. Ash, I'll do that if you want, but you'll still have to come back tomorrow. I soaked Phil's handkerchief. Okay, cutie pie, you can do it. Grace walked me back to the class where everyone was now watching the movie. At the bell, Miss Mack said, Why don't you stay and help me pop the popcorn for the rest of my classes today? Gay picked me up at the end of the day. We're proud of you for sticking it out, she said. Tomorrow will be easier, and in a few days, you'll make a friend. I doubt it, I mumbled. Although 2 days later, Grace invited me to a slumber party at her house with her friend Tess. I had never been allowed to stay overnight at a friend's house before. Please, can I go? I begged Gay. You're still a foster child, so I can't go? I don't want to risk them sending you back on technicality, even for a few weeks, but there's no reason Grace can't come to our house. She gave a theatrical groan. And then we have to plan your birthday the week after that. I hardly know anyone here to invite, I sighed. The only solution is to have 2 parties, Gay replied. We'll have a few of your school friends and family here, and then we'll invite all of your children's home friends to a restaurant in Tampa. Is that okay with you? Sure, I said, fully expecting something would go wrong the way it always did. On Friday, November 21st, we had a dinner party at our house to celebrate my 12th birthday. Guests included 2 girls in our neighborhood, Tabitha and Jillian, Gay's grandfather, Grampy Wiseman, the Hudsons and Luke, who was having an overnight visit with them, and a few other family friends. Gay somehow knew that I had never recovered my dolls from Miss Moss and gave me a doll designed to look like me. It came with an overalls outfit and a nightgown along with matching clothes in my size. Even though I was really too old for a doll, I was glad to have it. I had chosen the dinner menu, so I liked everything, especially the ice cream cake. Early the next morning, the phone rang. Gay came into the kitchen with a peculiar expression on her face. There's been a slight change of plans. I expected that somebody at the cottage had flipped out and ruined the day for everyone. So, is the party off? I asked. Not all news is bad news, Gay said. That was the director of the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, inviting us to Busch Gardens for an event later today. She also said that we could bring other adoptive families with us. Daphne, who was now living with her family full-time, was coming to my party, so I asked if her family could be included. I already invited them. During the long drive, I asked the Quarters, How did you hear about me since you live so far from Tampa? We have some friends from there. In fact, you'll meet them at Busch Gardens today, Phil said. They handed us Hillsborough County Children in Waiting Directory, which had your picture with Luke. Phil, remember how it had a clever poem and a picture on the cover that was signed by someone named Ashley? And you thought it might be the Ashley whose photo was inside, he continued. Were there 2 couples and 2 houses in the drawing? I asked. Yes, Gay said. She turned to Phil. I told you it was our Ashley. Gay fell in love with you then, Phil said, but she's a sucker for sappy poems. So I had won the contest, and the Quarters had seen it. What if Mr. Irvin hadn't talked me into going to the photo shoot that day? Maybe my luck really was turning, and this would be my best birthday ever. All the kids from Likes, as well as some of my friends from other cottages, met us at a buffet restaurant. Gay had ordered a cake decorated in the autumn colors I had decided were my favorites. I showed off my twin doll and received a giant card signed by all the cottage residents. Next, it was off to Busch Gardens with Daphne's family and the Paynes, the people who first had told the Quarters about me. Did you know that Dave Thomas was adopted? Phil asked me. That's why he wants every child to find a home. At the pavilion, Mr. Thomas was about to receive a donation for the foundation in the form of a giant cardboard check. As a photographer positioned everyone for the best angle, the foundation's director pushed me forward. Go stand next to Dave. You are what this is all about, she said. I hesitated, but Dave Thomas waved me forward. It's going to be all right, he said, as they snapped the pictures. You'll see. And I think we'll stop there. We're still in the middle of Chapter 10. We're on page 198 with a page break. So yeah, we'll stop there and pick up next time. Hope you're enjoying this one. And I'm hoping to finish it this week. So lots more sections coming. All right, hope you're doing well. Bye.